Welcome everybody to our next installment of our Dream Job webinar series. It's our second webinar of our fall semester of the new school year. Thank you to those who are still coming in and saying their names. Tanya from Freedom High School and Jacqueline Krikorian teaches Teacher Academy. Okay, so teaching teachers, future teachers. I'm Danny Rubin, I'm the founder of Rubin. We are a provider of online resources for business communication skills. Teachers, can I see some hands? How many of your students send you emails that look like text messages? Any hands up for emails that look like they're texting you? So we help students learn to write and speak appropriately, professionally for opportunities. And we're going to talk a little bit about those themes today as we explore the world of an educator with Principal Paul Barker from Alaska. And we are grateful to have him today, giving up his valuable time in a busy time of the school year. We so appreciate that. And we will dive into the conversation with him in just a few minutes. I want to welcome, we have our interpreter, Michelle Guyman here, and Alexis Krumke from the Rubin team, who will be helping us in the chat as we go and answering any questions there. Alexis, you can turn off your camera and hang out in the chat. And what I would like to do to get started is to share my screen and go through some news and notes and some free resources. We always like to give out free resources. We have some new material than what we were providing last semester. Okay, we made a lot of new resources over the summer, did some professional development with educators, and I want to pass it along to you here. So this is free. If you've never received it from us, I'll explain how to get it. We teach business communication skills, and we put together a free Google Drive resource on exercises for inclusion and equity. Any hands up that where inclusion is an important part of your curriculum or your school district? So we have some free resources on how to make sure everyone's included, dress code for in-person and virtual opportunities, understanding preferred pronouns, learning to respect someone else's opinions, and other resources. Everything focusing on teaching inclusion and equity and appreciating diverse opinions. And if you'd like these resources, hang tight, I'll explain in just a moment how to get it. We also always give this out too. It's a great little one-page resource on how to give effective online presentations, how to prepare, what to do before you go live or recorded, and as you deliver the presentation. So if you would like to have these resources on your end, there's no cost, there's no gimmicks, we just want you to have it. Here's how we like to give it out. First of all, please go to the chat, type the word interested and your email address. And for those who are new to the Rubin community, we like to reach you by phone the next day for 5 minutes to say hello, learn what you do, and help you make the most of our resources. We come at a different angle than a lot of other curricula out there. We want you to make the most of it. So if you'd like these resources, type the word interested and your email address in the chat right now, and we will provide these resources to you in the next several hours or tomorrow. Okay, interested and your email address. You can continue to do that, and I'm going to go to the next couple of slides and then we can start our Q&A. Thank you to those putting their information. I also want to tell you that today's session is part of a full webinar series every 2 weeks. And our next session will be on October 5th. We're talking to a pharmacy technician. So we really run the gamut with the careers we focus on. And this will be a great conversation with a farm tech who has worked at CVS and can really help us understand that job for all the health science students out there interested in potentially working in a pharmacy. That's for you. If you're watching this session on a recording, you can have the inclusion resources I just mentioned. Send us an email to the email address in red with the subject line below. And finally, everyone with us live today will get a certificate of completion tomorrow showing that you were here. Okay, so you're going to keep an eye on your email on Wednesday for the certificate. And if you're new to our community, you're going to see an invite on your calendar today for 5 minutes for tomorrow. And if it doesn't work for you, just suggest a new time. It's no problem at all. All right, so those are the housekeeping notes. Again, make sure if you're putting the word interested, you also put your email address so we know who to send it to. All right. I'd like to bring in our special guest now, Principal Barker, to have him provide his brief bio up to now. Run through your whole life, in 90 seconds or so, if you can. And then we're going to get into his work as a principal, as an educator, and drive the conversation from there. So Principal Barker, I will give you the floor, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Rubin, for that introduction. And thanks for everybody being out here. Appreciate you all coming in this afternoon on the East Coast. It's about 9:30 here in Alaska. So thank you so much to everybody that's joining the webinar today. This is a really neat opportunity for you all to see what it's like to be in education, and not just in education, but in what I consider a pretty unique part of education. I work in a small school, and I'm sure we'll get more into that later on in the chat. But anyway, my name is Paul. Mr. Barker, as I'm known here in this small school. I'm born and raised in New Jersey, so I'm very familiar with when Mr. Rubin was communicating with me. It was all in Eastern Standard Time, and that was easy for me to relate to, because whenever I'm talking with my family via FaceTime or communicating with them, it's all 4 hours ahead for me. So it's an easy thing for me to relate to. I grew up on the Atlantic coast in Ocean County, New Jersey, just north of Atlantic City, and I attended school at Ramapo College of New Jersey, not far from where Mr. Rubin was in Ridgewood there, Bergen County. So it's a beautiful part of the state. I went there for 3.5 years after attending community college for a semester, and got my bachelor's degree in teaching and history. And then I worked briefly as a substitute teacher. At that time, the teaching market was very stale, especially in New Jersey. There was not a lot of hope for a young educator pursuing a history job in a middle school or high school. So I really started to explore my boundaries and see what kind of opportunities were out there to get into a school. And that landed me here in King Cove in Alaska, which is a small community right on the tip of the Alaska Peninsula, about 600 miles southwest of Anchorage. And I've been in the state ever since then. I moved to one other district for a year, but I've kind of grown in this district in the Aleutians East Borough during the entirety of my career. And I've been exposed to different jobs and different opportunities in that span. I started off as an elementary school teacher right here down the hallway outside my office, taught 4th grade, 6th grade, wound up going to another school within the district, taught 1 year of special education, and did a lot of different things in that role. Taught home economics, taught elementary gym, and then during that same time got into administration and became the activities director for a school district that spans about 2,500 miles and has an operating budget of about $250,000 just for student travel. So that got me into administration, and then I earned my Type B principal certificate and took over this job 3 years ago, right on the brink of the pandemic in 2020, and been here ever since.
Wow. Okay. A lot of interesting things there. First of all, when we're in our sessions, in our dream job sessions, we listen very closely. And I'm a former journalist, and I'm always listening for interesting details. And you said, first of all, your school district is how many miles long? What was that number you said?
It's approximately 2,500 square miles.
Square
so
miles.
it stretches across many. Yeah, it stretches across islands, ocean, many different communities, and that's a very diverse place.
Okay, and then you said, I want to see if anybody was listening out there. You said you have a travel budget. Don't tell us the number. I want to see if they know in the chat. He said a number, a travel budget number Can someone put in the chat for me how much money they spend on travel because their distance is so vast, right? They're in just the great outdoors. No, it was close. It was not 25,000. I believe, there we go, $250,000 for travel. So wearing my journalist hat, and we talk a lot about this in our sessions, we ask follow-up questions, right? If he says we have a $250,000 budget for travel, what question should we ask next? I would say, why do you need that much money for travel? Go ahead and answer that.
Well, Mr. Rubin, that's a great question. So, like you said, we're rural, and in this community in King Cove, we're not connected to any other communities via the road system. So in Alaska, we have a terminology that we use locally here in the state. You're either on the road system or you're off the road system, and sometimes it's called the bush of Alaska. So, for example, this weekend we have a conference regional cross country meet, and we're competing against Sandpoint, who are our cross water rivals, so to speak. Right? They're about 70 miles away by the way the bird flies, about a 30-minute flight. So they'll come over here for the weekend, and they'll charter a 9-seat airplane to bring two loads of those kids over here. And that's a small potatoes event for us, right? And the reason the activities budget is so inflated and so large is because those airplanes cost quite a bit to charter, and this one will cost the district about $14,000 just for this weekend alone.
Wow.
And we operate basketball, which involves much more travel than cross country, as well as wrestling and Native Youth Olympics, which is a pretty unique activity here in the state.
Wow. Okay, so raise your hand if you just found that answer interesting. They're flying charter planes between towns to play sports, right? But for us to learn that information, I had to ask him that follow-up question, right? He threw something out there that could have just gone right on by. $250,000 for travel. Now, if I wasn't curious, it just goes on by. But I asked the question, and it led to this fascinating answer. So I want you to think, as you're going after your own opportunities, you're meeting people, if something interests you, ask more about it. The person will probably want to share. And that's a great skill to take with you into the world, is being curious of other people. As we have this conversation, I want you to start putting your own questions in the Q&A, not the chat. Please start putting your questions or your students' questions in the Q&A section along the bottom row of Zoom. And we will be picking your questions out. As you write your questions, share your name and your school so we can give you proper credit. Okay, so let's get into your career in education. You seem like you've done it all. You seem like you've done just about everything in the school, and you keep all the roles, lots of different ages. Now you're the principal. Was it always your intention? Did you want to be a principal? Did it just happen that way? How did your path play itself out?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started teaching, I had no interest in becoming a principal. Most teachers, when they get into the classroom, they have these grand ideas of changing the world, right? And you get in your classroom with these grandiose ideas of what it's going to be like to get into your classroom and just start running that and leading that space. After about 3 years, I got the proverbial shoulder tap from one of my mentors, and he came to me and he said, "Paul, you're doing a great job in your classroom, right? And you have an opportunity to expand that influence to a broader audience, to a broader scheme, so to speak." So he said, you should really get into administration, and I said, look, I'm not interested in being a principal. I love to teach, and I kind of want to keep my distance from between administration and teachers, right? It's a pretty common answer that you get, especially from young teachers. But as I thought about it more, about what they said to me as far as that influence to a broader scheme where you could expand your philosophy to a greater number of people, and that really stuck with me. So I decided to pursue administration for that reason, because when you really start leading a classroom, you start to think of the cultural impacts that you can have on that space. And it became an intent for me to expand that philosophy, not just in my self-contained classroom of fourth graders or sixth graders here in King Cove, but I can have a broader impact on this whole community and reach more people with that philosophy that I wanted to move forward on.
I like that. Thank you for that answer. We have some good questions coming in. Now, I'll ask these two combined. They're from Jessica Walters at SMEC in Alden, Minnesota. Two questions to combine, okay? How many students are in your school, and how many hours on average do you put in each week?
I'm going to avoid the hours per week question.
Okay.
So this is a really unique school, and it looks like most of our folks on the panel are from East Coast communities, and they probably have large school districts of great populations. So this is going to be another number and fact that shocks a lot of people about what it's like to work in a rural small school in Alaska. So we're a K through 12 building. And now that's just our enrollment. And from kindergarten through 12th graders, we have 69 students. Class sizes are very small here in this school. They max out at about 10, with the exception of our crazy kindergarten class this year, which is 13, which is a huge class for us. Now, this school is even more unique because we have preschool students, 3 and 4 years old in this building. This year, we have 8 of those combined. And then it's even more unique because we offer full-time Head Start, which is a pre-K program where students are just 3 years old, right? So I like to give the analogy that we have students that are just 3 feet tall all the way up to 6 feet tall, ranging from ages 3 to 18, and they're all in the same building. So it's a really special space. As far as the hours that I work, I try not to keep track of them. As a principal, you're especially in a small school, you wear a lot of hats, right? And I'm here as a servant to my staff and my students here, serving them the best that I can. I usually get to work about an hour before my first employee. That's kind of difficult because my first employee is my maintenance fella, and he gets here at 7 a.m. So I usually get to work around 6:15, 6:30. And that gives me an opportunity to meet with Donnie on anything that I need to touch base with him on before the day starts. Depending on the way the day runs itself, self-care is also important. So I try to check myself out at about 4 o'clock. But I may wind up doing an airport pickup for students that are coming to King Cove for cross country. I may work on the weekend to pick up mail packages that are flying here into the community and help disperse those to staff. There could be any number of things that might require my attention. So it's hard to give a solid number down to the hours per week, but I would say it's somewhere around 50 to 60.
Would you say whether you're in a large high school, 2,000 students, you're in your program, K through 12 in much smaller numbers, but do you imagine that if you're in administration, you're probably wearing a lot of hats no matter where you work, big or small? Do you think that's probably the case for others in your field?
Absolutely. And it's not just administrators that wear a lot of hats. Teachers do. If you think of a great teacher, a great teacher is a counselor. They're a friend. They're a support system to students. There's someone that teaches kids how to tie their shoes, right? All of these things that teachers do every day kind of just means that they wear different hats, and it's just part of the job. Then there's some formal hats that they wind up doing anyway. Like they might during COVID, we had teachers checking students' temperatures as they came to school. We have teachers and educators that volunteer to referee basketball games here. So all kinds of things. We're always in the field of education. You're always looking to support one another. It's that kind of job where it's such a team mindset, and really the greatest benefit to that is that you're helping the kids, and it really is the best job in the world for that reason alone. Is that you get to work with children, and for that reason alone, I still tell everybody that education is the best field to go into because you get to work with kids.
And there's some other questions in the chat, but again, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Why is it so great in your mind to work with kids versus adults or any other customer base, essentially. Why do you draw satisfaction from working with children?
Sure. Mr. Rubin, you get that sense of wonder when you work with children, whether you're with a kindergartner who's just learning how to read, and anybody that's seen a 4 or 5-year-old, read their first word. The wonder is just it's just such an amazing thing. There's really no substitute for it. But you also get that when you shake the hands of the seniors that graduate in May. Because I tell our seniors, I meet with them in the beginning of every school year, and I tell them, it's not just you graduating at the end of the school year. It's me giving you a diploma and shaking your hand and knowing that you're ready to go out there into the world with a plan after you've spent the last 12 years or more here in this building. So those things, those fulfillment aspects of the job are they're those intrinsic rewards that you just don't get from a salary, or from other incentives like summers off, right? I mean, those two things that I referenced with kindergartners learning how to read and seniors graduating, they mean a lot more to me than the money that I make or the salary that I'm happy to earn, or the summers that I have off. I mean, that's just such a fulfilling part of the job.
Wow. And again, it's a great answer. I love the answer of watching this child read for the first time, that the word you used, wonder. And it all came from me asking a follow-up question to go deeper in the conversation. Can everybody raise their hand? You see what I'm doing here? When we ask follow-up questions, the conversation becomes more interesting and more meaningful, more memorable for both of us. So it's so important that we learn to listen and show somebody we want to know more. We have some other good questions here in the chat. I'm going to combine two again from the same school. Ann Milliken and her students in Wakefield. How many students are in the graduating class this year? And the students are wondering if you have a music program. And if so, how many students participate in the music program?
Sure. So this year's graduating class is small but mighty. There are 4 of them. So they're just four kids graduating this year. They're all on track to graduate, so they will all graduate in May. And they're going into all kinds of diverse fields. We have one pursuing the military, 2 that are going to be attending college, and then 1 that's probably going to go a trade route there and get into heavy machinery and operation. The second question was about band, right?
Yeah, band or a music program.
Sure. Yeah. We're fortunate enough to have a very robust music program here in our small school, and it's mostly a middle school band. So it's a mandatory course for 7th and 8th grade students, but also open to as an elective for high school students from grades 9 through 12. Right now, that band is sitting at 13. And they put on their major 2 events, or 2 big programs, one in the winter and one in the spring. We put on a nice Christmas winter concert for the community, where parents and everyone from the community can come into the school and watch their children perform. And then we do something similar in the spring. We call it a spring concert.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. We have some other questions here in the chat. We have Rosa Geeter from Kemper County Middle School. What time does your school start and end?
8 a.m. start, 3 p.m. Is when students go home for the day. Every Wednesday, we have an early dismissal where students are released at 2 p.m. And we utilize that next hour as a staff for professional development topics. We discuss student data, MTSS, and support for students.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question here from Amy Tingaridis. Amy, I hope I pronounced your last name right. It's nice to have you here. What step did you have to do to be a teacher for elementary school, like 1st and 2nd grade, those early grades? What was your training? What did you have to do to get in that job?
Sure. Great question. My path was unique. Yeah, I mean, most people have what you planned for usually doesn't wind up being what you wind up doing, right? Everybody's journey is different, and that's okay, right? So when I was at Ramapo, I was studying to be a secondary level high school teacher, right, in social studies. And I was one of those teachers that said, I'll never teach any kids younger than 7th grade, But when I I applied for this job in King Cove, it was a job called a sixth grade generalist. I didn't even know what that was, from New Jersey. And I found out what it was really fast because I was teaching everything from reading, writing to music. I was part of the music program back then. So in order to, since I had my teaching credential from Ramapo, the only additional step that I had to take was to pass a Praxis 2 series, which is the content level praxis. And it's something that every teacher has to pass in many, many states to get their highly qualified certification. And I passed that Praxis 2 content knowledge in elementary education, which allowed me to get a highly qualified status from the state of Alaska to teach elementary grades.
Thank you. Very helpful. And is it, how do you spell praxis? What is that word? Make sure students understand that's a very technical thing. You have to go through a certification. How do you spell, what is that?
Sure. So the Praxis series, Praxis,
That's what I was thinking.
is an educational, online educational services series, right? So if you're becoming a lawyer, you have to pass the bar, right? If you become a doctor, you have to pass the MCAT. The Praxis is the education series of tests that educators need to pass in order to be certified, so to speak, right? So every teacher, regardless of their content they're going into, whether it be elementary or science or the humanities, they all have to pass the Praxis 1 series, and students usually take that in college before they graduate. And then Praxis 2 is usually taken in your content that you studied in your undergrad, right? So what you're studying in your baccalaureate pursuit of your degree, you'll pursue the content Praxis 2 knowledge test. And recent college graduates usually take that test right after they graduate from their undergrad.
Thank you very much. That's excellent information. We like to get technical in here when we can, because we have to, sometimes there's like actual practical functional things you have to do or pass or complete to get into a profession. And that's a word I put in the chat. And I just want to reiterate, you see me hanging around these keywords, these numbers he's sharing, these technical certifications, programs. I'm all about proper nouns and numbers, because that's what you can actually hold on to and remember. And even right now, I'm looking at a lot of resumes at our company, and I'm just seeing so many that are just words, and they don't have numbers. They don't have proper nouns. They're just a lot of words about abilities, and it's hard to hold on to somebody's, kind of who they are. When we start getting technical and ground floor with these words, it really helps to bring out the real person. So I want to ask a question. We have a couple more in the chat I want to get to, but I want to know something, because, again, I'm coming from the journalism background. I look at storylines, trends, the news, and across the country throughout COVID, there's been teachers leaving the profession, taking early retirement, afraid to be in the classroom because of potential illness. There's a lot of reasons. And there are teacher shortages even now, probably impacting many of the schools of teachers in this chat. And so have you seen teacher shortages hit King Cove? And either way, what would you say to a student who's like, teaching used to look pretty nice, but now I'm not so sure it's even worth it for me to do it? How do you answer that sort of the COVID shortage issue and just looking at it as a desirable profession?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And it's such a recent current event here, right? That's really affecting the whole world, really, from a grand scheme of things. COVID has impacted every level of infrastructure, from top to bottom, in every, in the private sector, public sector. It's had an impact on everything. And that includes education. It was the greatest impact on education in any of our lifetimes. And we'll hopefully never see anything like that again. And we're really, really fortunate here in King Cove to have a fully staffed building. I have teachers in every classroom that are certified. That's a rarity right now in the state and across the country. So Mr. Rubin was talking about the importance of certification. When I'm peeling through resumes, those are the first things I look for. Are you certified? And for a lot of principals, they're kind of passing that over now. And state departments of education are reacting to this teacher shortage, and they're allowing teachers to come into classrooms that aren't certified. Now, as an educational leader here, I don't think that serves our students best, right? I want highly qualified, certified teachers interacting with students on a regular basis. So that's one impact that's been occurring everywhere. We just happen to be really lucky here in our recruitment strategies in King Cove that we were able to get great teachers to come here. Now that was a team effort, right? The interview process, the way that we marketed ourselves as a district and its school allowed us to get access to some really great educators. Now the next step is to hang on to them, right? Because we do have several new teachers this year. So that's the next step. But as far as the way that trends go, and I know that I'm mostly speaking with high school students, everything ebbs and flows, right? So right now, there's a teacher shortage because there's just a high level of influence to work at your home, right? A lot of businesses will allow you to work from home. That's enticing to employees. So it's really a matter of people being led away from the education profession because there are other enticing alternatives there. Now, I mean, that will shift. The world will always need teachers. And if there's one thing that we learned from COVID via all of the distance learning that occurred, is that it's just not effective, right? This was something that was coming anyway in education. We kind of saw it coming to where there was a push for distance learning, right? Zoom classrooms, online coursework, different alternative ways to allow students to earn diplomas, right? Those kind of trickled in, and then COVID came, and then everybody had to go distance, right? Now we'll be uncovering the data of the learning loss for the next 50 years that occurred over the last 2, right? But we know that the impact was great, and that Zoom classrooms and distance learning for elementary students and for young secondary students especially just doesn't work, right? So it almost put a capital value on the in-person experience with a highly qualified educator, right? So what I would tell young aspiring educators today is that if you're interested in teaching, continue to be interested in it, because by the time you graduate with your baccalaureate or perhaps a master's degree in education, there's a high level of possibility and likelihood that it'll have shifted back, and education will be on the forefront of a very desirable job. Because like I said, you're still working with kids, right? Greatest job there is, because you're working with kids, and it is just it's a wonderful profession for many other reasons too. So continue to explore that. It's greatest job there is.
That's a great answer. And sheds, I like your approach that, look, you're right, everything like I said, ebbs and flows, and there is a premium on being together, being in person, learning together, interacting together. That has not gone away despite all the remote opportunities. I want to share my screen, and I neglected at the beginning. I usually do this at the front. I always like to show we've done our research on our guest, and I did, and then I forgot to bring it up. But prior to the conversation, I was on Mr. Barker's Twitter page, seeing what he's been tweeting or retweeting, and getting to know him. And he recently shared a meme about leadership, just to show kind of where his head is as an administrator. And he also shared some photos of an open house and sort of getting the school year together. What about these pictures makes you proud, looking at the ones you decided to post?
Sure. So those are pictures from our open house that we had about a month ago there. Yeah. And the one on the right, that bulletin board, this is a small Alaska Native community. The other one there, Mr. Rubin, where you had the bird there.
Oh, yes.
Here in King Cove is 98% Alaska Native. They're Aleut, and their traditional word for their culture is Anungan. So that's what you see there on that bulletin board is a value that we learned from the elders here in the community, which is be kind to others. Now, don't ask me to translate that for you. That's a difficult one for me. But it's something that we're trying to connect the students with their local culture here. I'm going to give it my best shot here. Agatashitin, Ikem Nasara, which means
I'll
be
take
kind
it.
to
I'll
others.
take it.
Right? Now, if I had some of my local teachers in here that were
Sure.
born and raised in King Cove, they would be laughing at me right now, but they'd probably give me a good old pat on the
Well,
back
at
for
least we're not
trying.
recording this.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah. So it's important to us in this school to to help students and our kids, be connected to their local community, right, and foster that local culture. When they look around and they see these things, it makes them feel at home when they're
Mm,
here, which gives them a greater comfort when they're in the building, which in turn helps their success in the classroom for the things that we're trying to teach them. So we have a value each month that we foster, and then we celebrate. We celebrate those that are kind of showing us that value every day in our school. The mural that you see on the left is a mural that we had from the Artist in Residence program, which is a national program. And this one's name was Jen Peters, I think. She was from Stewart, Alaska, and she came out and she did that mural with our kids in
wow.
2014. And she did most of the painting, but she gave all of the students the opportunity to help and do part of that artwork. And you do see the traditional language there and some of the values depicted on that beautiful mural.
Wow.
Now, if you go to the other picture you had there, those are just some, that's just a welcoming bulletin board that we had when students came in. They could write their name on that pencil, be ready for a great year, and kind of tape it up there with a crayon. So the open house was well attended. When you work in a public school, you want to try to bring those community members and those families in as often as possible to show them the great things that are going on in your building. So I use Twitter to help advertise that. You got to live your excellence, right? That's kind of our hashtag this year. And you have to try to be that soundboard for all the good things that are happening in your organization.
Thank you for sharing those things. And again, the more that I show interest in what he's saying, what he's sharing, the more interesting the conversation becomes. I can't stress that enough. Too many conversations we have in our lives are very on the surface. And when we learn to go a little deeper, that's where the good stuff is. And I enjoyed learning more about these two items on the wall that he helped to explain and add a lot of context to. So it's always a good thing to show people you care about what they are interested in. I want to do a little exercise with the group. We did a lot of this last year. We're going to bring it back in the fall. First of all, I just want to say this is a very momentous day for our company. We, alongside our webinar series, we provide an online curriculum to many CTE programs, high schools, middle schools around the country. And today we have launched a brand new learning platform, a completely redesigned, reimagined through a lot of customer feedback the last couple of years. And so I'd like to show a quick writing assignment inside the platform. We're teaching email etiquette, phone etiquette, networking skills, team communication, a whole library of activities. And I have one pulled up here on learning how to not send emails like text messages and helping students understand what is appropriate and inappropriate. And what I'd like for you to do, if I could have the students or the teacher help participate in the chat one last time here, I want everybody to rewrite this texty looking sentence, THX for the time today. I appreciate it. Can you go to the chat, please, and rewrite this sentence or sentences as complete sentences, fully spelling everything out? Can you go to the chat, please, everybody participating, and show us what that line should look like? And as we do that, I'll ask Mr. Barker, why is it important that when students leave your school, they know how to write to people appropriately with full sentences? Why should that be a skill that everybody needs to understand by the time they graduate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we love to teach here at our school is how do you present yourself the way that you want to be presented and received to any level of professional, right? Because you may not know the person that you're emailing, right? And first impressions, Mr. Rubin, especially in my seat, when I have a whole stack of resumes and applications, first perceptions are so critical, right? So you want your email to, at a minimum, look professional and at least grammatically correct. So that I wouldn't even read that email if I got it from a student. I wouldn't even take the time to read it. because it's just unprofessional. It looks like it wasn't the time wasn't taken to portray themselves in a professional light.
Thank you. And we have some great examples in the chat. Thank you to all the students and teachers participating in that to show us what it means to be professional. Like he said, and we've heard this so many times in our webinars, people will not answer your messages. It's not that they look at it and might respond. They won't even look at it. So if we think that we're in this new era post-COVID digital where we don't have to be appropriate, we've heard from so many different industries, I will not read your messages. And I just cannot say that enough in these sessions, because students have to hear it, that they're not trying to be unprofessional, but that's how it comes across. Now, in our final few minutes, I want to wrap up with those same items I mentioned at the beginning, and then I have a final question I want to ask to our guests. Let me go right back here. For those who missed it at the beginning, I saw a few folks came in after we started. We offered at the beginning a free Google Drive of resources for inclusion and equity, a video and activity on keeping everybody included, dress code, best practices for a preferred pronoun discussion, learning how to respect people's opinions, even if they're not opinions that you necessarily agree with, but hearing them and appreciating them just the same. Also, an online presentation checklist of best practices to give an online presentation. If you would like these resources and you missed it at the beginning, please go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address, interested and your email address. And if you are new to our community, never used our resources before, we will send you an invitation for a 5-minute phone call on Wednesday. The time is not good, just reply back with a new time, so we can learn about your program and have you share these resources, not just with your students, but with your school or your district. And you can be the launch point for these resources. Also, on October 5th, our Dream Job series continues. We're talking to a pharmacy technician. You'll see a link to register for that in the coming days. Please share that with all your health science teachers in the district. If you're watching on a recording, you can have these same inclusion resources with the email in red in the subject line below. And also, everybody here with us live is going to get a certificate of completion. Look for that in your email on Wednesday as well. Let me come back, and I want to ask something that I was curious about prior to, is this idea that students have become unruly, parents are telling teachers what to do. There's no, that idea that sort of the teacher knows best, and now it's like, how dare you tell my child that? I'm the parent. There's so much around the country what books can be read and all of this. What would you say again to an aspiring educator seeing this in the news, seeing it on social media, feeling like, why would I ever want to go into that occupation? It seems like so negative in so many ways. Sure. You've said it in different ways along the way about why you're passionate, but on those specific points about student behavior, parents and teachers, and you're sort of combative, how do you answer that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. It is just it's a national topic right now. A lot of it gets exacerbated and overly politicized in today's world, and we all love social media. I'm on Twitter. We're all in some way, right, linked into social media, but social media also exacerbates that. And similar to what we talked about with the email, right? You can't exhibit tone a lot through social media, right? So real often, a social media interaction is just a quick snap of what you see, and then it can quickly blow up and go viral, right? So if you speak with really experienced educators, like I have a lot in this building. I have 2 teachers that were born and raised here in King Cove, and they've been teaching in this school for over 20 years. They'll tell you that it's the same. Students haven't changed, parents haven't changed, the situation hasn't changed either. What's changed is the world, and the way that we interact and consume information and then react to it, right? Subsequently, that's changed, right? But students are generally the same, right? The issues that come up are similar to what came up 20 years ago or longer, right? Parents care about their kids, right? That's never changed. If you think about these things from a large, big picture perspective, or as a principal, I always like to call it the balcony view, right? The big picture. is that things are pretty similar and very stable.
That's a great way to end it, because teaching is such a noble profession, and we wouldn't want anybody to run away from it because of what they are perceiving in the news or in social media, when what you're saying is, the years change, but it largely is the same needs, the same values, the same feelings, and the same process. So good way to wrap it up. Mr. Barker, I want to thank you so much for all of your insights. Can we see some Zoom hands up as a virtual applause for our guest today? He gave some great information, and we will be placing it on YouTube for safekeeping for those to watch later. Thank you again, and appreciate everybody participating in our conversation. We'll see you in October for the pharmacy tech conversation, and have a great rest of your school week. And thanks again. We'll see you soon.